Hey everybody, I'm just gonna wait a few minutes before we get started here. Hopefully everybody's gonna be popping in. And I'm Madge, and this is Natalie, and we are with Unlimited Ministries. So we're actually finishing up a series this month on relationships. And I know relationships are beautiful and amazing and yet complicated and sometimes can be confusing. So anyway, what we want to do is invite you tonight to pop on and join us with any questions that you may have regarding relationships, or even questions about after a breakup and how to handle that situation. So we are glad that you joined us tonight, and those who will keep popping on, and we're going to keep watching also the feed to see if anyone comes on to ask any questions. So again, thank you for joining us at this Unlimited Ministries. And by the way, we meet on Sunday mornings out on Highway 72 East over Chapman Mountain, and we'd love to have you join us at 11 a.m. for our services. So, hey Nat, why don't we get started?
All right.
Let's talk about getting back on course.
Okay.
In a relationship. Say it's kind of veered off, gone the wrong direction. How can we get back on course? And so we're going to talk about communication. And some of the things that you and I have talked about and we listed is about, are we on the same page?
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on that? And
well, what we were talking about really was during this whole month, we've talked about how to begin a relationship, how to get on the same page, how to build from the foundation up. A lot of the questions that have been coming in has been more along the lines of, okay, maybe we didn't start it properly, we got in too quick,
right.
And so we've been talking about basically course correction.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do now? And like everything else, first and foremost is communication.
Absolutely.
You have to have the desire, both parties have to have the desire for clear, concise communication. And sometimes that's the hard conversations. It's easy to kind of gloss over things like, yeah, we're on the same page, but it's really hard to say, this is my shortcomings, this is your shortcomings.
Exactly.
You can go.
Yeah. So I guess part of that would be, we need to find out what would be important in that conversation, in that dialogue. What are they thinking? They need to know what we're thinking. And those conversations, sorry about that, that's
we got cats.
We got cats all over the place. And so, are we a team? Are we working together towards the same thing? I think a lot of times we have, in teamwork, we expect each other to have unity, which is a good thing.
Yes.
Unity is always important in a relationship. It doesn't mean uniformity, though, because uniformity says, no, you have to do it exactly this way. And two people can have two different ideas, but yet reach the same goal.
Yes.
And I think that leads us to that point that goals are important, where we've got to talk about goals.
Well, yes. If you're talking about course correction, the number one thing is both people, the first thing you've got to cover is, what are our goals?
Mm-hmm.
What is the goal of this? Is it to, do we have the same definition
right.
of what a relationship is? That's the hard part, because everybody says, you can easily say, we're going to work hard and make this work.
Yep.
But to get down to, and let me stop real quick too,
yeah.
because I don't ever want this to come across like Madge and I have it all together, we know everything.
Mercy,
we're not
no.
coming at it from that point. Both of us have had failed relationships, yeah. And we've had our own struggles the first year or so of our relationship.
Yeah.
So what we try to do is share through what challenges we faced, and hopefully maybe help some people avoid the same thing we went through.
Absolutely. And I actually came into the relationship with a lot of baggage, a lot of insecurities and a lot of fears. And just a funny part of that, I, I, I had even a lot of questions about the LGBT community.
Yeah.
And, and sometimes still do. And so, I didn't understand a lot of things. And so Natalie was very gracious. And here's what was important is that we had to start off on friendship.
Yes.
I believe that that is the number one place where we have to begin.
Even talking about course correction, when you go back to square one, a lot of times where relationships have gone a little crazy or off is because you kind of jumped in too quick.
Yeah.
You got into a relationship based on passion and chemistry rather than who is this person? Can I truly call them my best friend? And you become best friends, but you didn't start out that way.
Right.
And so a lot of the course correction is, let's put all the chemistry and passion to the side, and let's really get to know each other. What do we have in common? What do we enjoy doing? And really kind of build that, when you have a best friend, you can tell them anything. They're not going to judge you. They've got your back.
Right.
So you've got to kind of come at the relationship the same way. Do you trust that person 100%? And that's hard over a certain age when we've had failed relationships because we all bring baggage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do we have any questions coming in?
Not yet.
No questions yet. All right. So also in this communication time, I think it's very important that we do what's called self-evaluation. Am I giving 100%? Am I doing my best? Are there some things that I could actually do differently? Self-evaluation is excruciating at times, but it's absolutely necessary for us because, see, even the Bible talks about don't try to get the speck out of your brother's eye when you have a log or a beam in your own eye. And so I think it's important that we communicate in our relationships by, I think the number one thing apart in that communication within is listening with understanding and with respect and with honor. And I have not done well at this sometimes because I have wanted to formulate an answer without actively listening and hearing what Natalie has said to me. And so I have to do self-evaluation. I want to go back to that. I have to do self-evaluation. Why am I uncomfortable even sometimes in the challenges that are facing me? Why is it that maybe what she's trying to communicate offended me? And a lot of times it's not what she said or even how she said it. It's what I perceive through excess baggage that I came in with. What do you think about that?
Well, when you were talking about self-evaluation, that always sounds easy, but it's harder than you think. Because the number one thing we have issues sometimes is how getting in touch with how we really feel about something.
Yeah.
We either think too highly of ourselves or sometimes we have low self-esteem.
Yes.
So it's a matter of getting real with yourself. Is this really something that I want? How do I want it? What do I want it to look like?
Yes.
That's first and foremost, because so many people, I think, they don't intentionally lie, but they're lying to themselves, and so when they share something they think is the truth, but it's based on a lie they've told themselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think another point within the communication is also about expectations. There's nothing wrong with expectations if they're in balance.
Yes.
And sometimes, and this is what we try to tell people, and I wish someone would have told this to me. Before you ever even enter into a relationship, lay everything on the table.
Yes.
Talk about anything and everything, because otherwise you assume that they're thinking what you're thinking and expecting what you want them, what they're expecting from you. And so expectations can need to be realistic. I think sometimes we fantasize about what something should look like. We have these grandiose ideas in relationships.
The
sometimes.
media has really kind of pushed that. I mean, you start as a young kid dreaming of a fantasy wedding, or she's going to sweep me off my feet, and happily ever after, and a lot of it's focused on a wedding.
Oh yes.
And the biggest part to me is not the wedding; it's the marriage that comes after. That's usually the biggest challenge.
Right. Have you ever had any unrealistic expectations?
I'm pretty much a pessimist, so I'm the opposite of you in that regard. But I always say if you lower your expectations, then everybody will shock you in a good way.
Yeah. And it's good to talk about your expectations. So communicate with your partner or your friend about that, about what those expectations are. That they be healthy, realistic expectations. We already talked about establishing friendship, because that is important. Because when we started off on, just purely passion, sex, it can crumble, because honestly, truly, when you get older, that will wax and wane.
Oh yeah.
And
the longer you're together,
yeah.
I mean, you've got that's another one of those adjust your expectations.
Yes.
Because it's just natural to, as you know each other better, that's the important part of being best friends, because when the passion does go to a simmer rather than a full boil, you have stuff in common, and there's other positive things you do together.
Absolutely.
Sarah's online.
Okay.
She was agreeing with trying to hear what your partner's going to say, and listening before, and not being triggered, and preparing to talk. That's one of the points you made a while ago.
Yeah, Sarah, thanks for joining us. Anybody else have any questions? We definitely want you to hop on and type those in so that we could take a look at those. And we did have a question to come up, and I'll be honest with you, I wasn't quite sure how to address this, so I'm just going to be honest with you. And the question was that was given to us was position on having sex in a committed monogamous relationship but not married. Now, I'm going to speak pastorally here, okay?
Let the pastor speak first.
I'm going to speak pastorally from the perspective of Scripture and how the Bible defines it, okay? The Bible defines that, here's what it says. It's called fornication when two people outside of marriage have intercourse or sex. When a married person hooks up with a single person, that would be called adultery. So let's just define that the way it is. Now, we live in a culture that's pretty challenging. And also, I think biblically that this is encouraged. I think we're in a society that is so hard in the day that we live in. And, I would say that is a very personal thing, though, that you would have to take to the Lord.
Yeah.
You would just have to allow the Lord to lead you in that. And if He does lead you in that abstinence until that time of marriage, then He will give you the strength. But that is also something, communicate with your partner on this before you ever hit that boundary or that point, because that is such a beautiful, cherished moment where two people need to know in that committed relationship if that is the direction that needs to go.
Yeah. Well, and non-pastoral speaking.
Thank you. There we go.
Culturally speaking, especially within the LGBTQ plus category, we didn't have marriage for a long time. And if you're of the age of myself, you never thought you would. So, and that's been a recent development that there even has been marriage. So a lot of that needs to be considered when you're contemplating these decisions, because unfortunately, with not having marriage as a viable option, it led us to do whatever we wanted whenever we wanted. And so that's why it kind of goes back to it's an individual
Yeah.
thing. And spiritually, it's between two people to discuss and decide and be on the same page.
Absolutely. And this is part of the reason, too, that we so highly encourage building a friendship-based relationship. Because that way, it is built on something solid. Should anything ever arise that would cause any issues within the area of sexual relationship. And so we do encourage that friendship. All right, now we're going to shift gears here just a little bit, okay? We're going to shift gears because this is something that came up. How do you deal or how do you handle it? The proper way to handle after a breakup. This is something that we need to learn how to process.
Yes.
And we don't get to talk much about that. So we're going to hit that for just a minute tonight. So, the proper way to handle it. Sometimes.
Or ideal.
Or the ideal, yeah. There's no, we're not going to say perfect way because every situation is very unique within itself. I will say this, I see two extremes sometimes. I see the rebound effect within a breakup. They will automatically rush into one relationship. And then I've seen the other extreme where it goes to unhealthy isolation.
Yes.
And so Natalie, tell me about maybe some of your experiences after and some of the things that you would encourage after the breakup.
Well, first and foremost, ideally, the two people came into a relationship together, and in my opinion, that's how the two people should go out together. It's the same thing of building a relationship is doing a breakup as well as you can.
Yeah.
It's never easy, but you need the same things. You need communication. You need to be on the same page. How are we going to do this? Especially when you've been in a long-term relationship. Mm-hmm. You've got property, children, finances all intertwined. And the role of the person who is more wanting to break up versus the person who's getting broken up with.
Oh, yeah.
If you're the person that's doing the breaking up or more instigating it, you have to have a lot of compassion and try to communicate as best as possible. It's never going to be easy, but that's a lot of the biggest issue is because one person has the idea we're going to take our time, separate things slowly,
right?
And the other person's like, well, I need to rip it off like a Band-Aid and get it over with. And boom, you're never going to see me again.
Right, right. So, respect the closure process. Communicate how both of you want to do that. Maybe even say, okay, before we finalize this, do we go to counseling?
Yeah.
By the way, I am a huge proponent of counseling and therapy. I think it's absolutely wonderful. Whether you're the one that broke up in the relationship or you're the one that experienced the other side of the breakup. Yeah. Because there are reasons and that we need to get to the bottom of how we feel, all of the emotions involved, and those things that maybe even were components of initiating that breakup. So I think it's always healthy to talk about that. Especially if you're married, and you've been in a long-term marriage, we highly encourage that. So Natalie, what else would you say, maybe some things about dealing with a breakup or you're at the end of a relationship trying to work through that? Anything else? I know sometimes there's some weird things that happen. Why breakups happen. And they didn't mean to happen that way.
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of things. We discussed earlier about cheating.
Yes.
There's no blanket way to cover this is how you do it, this is how you handle it. There's, it's a case by case basis. It may matter to one person that it was a whoops one off accident versus a long time affair. It just really depends on how it happens. And same thing with the breakups. If one party is just like, I'm out of here,
Yeah.
there's not much you can do.
Right.
And a lot of it is dependent on if it's more of a mutual breakup, or you wanting to try to maintain a friendship at some point in the future.
That's good, yeah.
If you're really trying to love the person without being in love, at some point you need to make sure you're fostering that respect as you go along, by communication.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think another important aspect of this is forgiveness.
Oh yeah.
Now, I know that is a huge word. Guess what? It doesn't happen overnight. I believe that you can forgive, but then I think there is a process of healing in that forgiveness that takes place. And forgiveness can only happen through the grace of God. And you have to be ready and to that point and choose to forgive in those situations. Whether it was through infidelity, whether it was through mistrust or anything like that, forgiveness is a huge proponent. I think also in the breakup, and Natalie kind of alluded to this, and I did too earlier, there has to be good, healthy boundaries in how things are done and how things are followed through. And when let me just say that, back up because I was looking at my note here. When you do go to counseling or get counseling and therapy, don't let it be your running buddy.
Yes.
That could go south pretty quick. Get a non-biased third party that's not going to take either side, and that will actually speak some truth to you. I know we all love encouragers. There is a time and a place for that, but there's also a time for honest, careful, direct approaches and comments that need to be said. I think a lot of times those come through good counseling, counselors and therapists. So anyway, so no relationship is a one-size-fits-all.
No.
It's really taking it to God. God, what do you want to do here? How do you want to do this? And what are you saying in it? And so I just want to encourage you to have healthy relationships. And should you go through a breakup, to seek good friendships of those around you, seek good counseling, take some time to heal. Don't rush back into a relationship. And always let's try to build on good, solid friendships.
And another thing too, if counseling's not quite your thing,
right?
One of the things that I think is always helpful is more of a mediator.
Yeah.
Someone who knows both parties enough that they can help with communication. I know one of the problems we had early on, almost broke up over it, was we weren't hearing each other.
Exactly.
There was hurt on one side and hurt on the other.
Yeah.
I'm talking to you to get you to listen to me. I'm talking to you to get you to listen to me.
Yeah.
Situations like that, a mediator could have kind of helped. What I hear you saying is, and what I hear, and we were actually, when everything came clean, we were actually kind of saying the same thing.
Right, right. And I knew at that moment I had filtered through some hurt. Yeah. And so we were able to work through that. It did take some time. And one point I will make, when you're at what I call a standoff on something, don't allow that standoff in that situation to filter over into every other area.
Yes.
And sometimes you need to designate a specific time and place to deal with just that issue. Otherwise, you would be dragging it into all the other affairs of everyday life, and that could be unhealthy as well. So,
when we talk about relationships, we talk about trust.
Yes.
And sometimes not having complete trust is not about the other person.
That's exactly
That's
right.
what we keep talking about, the baggage.
Yes.
It's like, I am not trusting you completely because the last person did this.
Exactly.
You know, if you've had a bad relationship where maybe it's created abandonment issues, some of my issue, you're always looking for signs in the next relationship. Is that going to happen? Because last time I was blindsided, so this time I want to see it coming.
Right.
It takes a long time to move past all that.
It does. Well, hey guys, we are so grateful to have this opportunity tonight just to go back and, go back over some things from this past month on relationship, on communication, on commitment, and know that you are complete in Christ and that no one else completes you. We all complement each other. And when you're in a good relationship, we complement each other and we help each other. And so I'm so glad that you joined us tonight. And if you have any other questions, feel free to send us a message at Unlimited
or you
Ministries.
can comment, because this will stay on our Facebook page for a bit.
Or comment. And hey, also just to let you know, in March, we're going to be talking about money matters, about investing, about checkbooks, about 401ks, anything pertaining to money. We want to try to address that at the end of the month. The last Sunday, we'll have a Q&A discussion like we did this past week at Unlimited, to be able to have some people who have experience in these areas help guide us and give us some insight.
And also from a biblical standpoint.
Yes.
What does the Bible say about certain issues? Because
Absolutely.
money is mentioned more in the Bible than anything else.
Absolutely. And it's nothing to be afraid of. And so we're going to have a good time going through that series on money matters. And so anyway, love you guys. Hope you have a great night, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.